Jai we'll start with the Nokar mantra. Om Namo Arihantanam, Om Namo Sitanam, Om Namo Ayadiyanam, Om Namo Jayanam, Namo Luve Savasahunam, Eso Panchanamo Karo, Sava Pavapanasano, Mangalalancha Sarvesim, Paramam Have Mangalam, Paramam Have Mangalam. All right, so this morning we're going to start with questions, some follow-up questions that Borish had specifically about how Jainism can help with your relationships. Is that right?
That is right. Although I will just put it to you all, since Nick has to leave early, if you want to do it in a reverse order, then I'm all for it. We can discuss the video because I know he wanted to discuss that. So if that's okay, we can discuss that first and we can get to the questions later.
All right.
I'm okay. Don't worry about me. I saw the video and I thought I should definitely join in and say that, hey, thank you for sending.
Okay, let's start with the follow-up questions then.
Oh, okay. First of all, as I mentioned last time, Tim, thanks a lot for covering that. It's something that I personally am very keen to see how I can improve. And Jainism obviously it helps us in a lot of things, and this is one area that I think it can really help me personally. And I'm sure some of you all can also benefit. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I unfortunately was not able to join the discussion, but I heard we heard the recording, and a lot of good things were said. I will keep it short. So the kids, dealing with kids and the forgiveness part, I get that. Spouses and ekantwad, which I think is sort of universal across the board, but especially true for spouses. Friends, saralta. So on the and straightforward, right? I would just kind of put one question to the group. There are times when we know certain friends have different views, certain friends have different opinions, which differ from you. It's going to cause friction, right? So without conceding, without saying, you are right or I'm right, is it just better in your view or in the group's view to just not go there? Just don't go there. Let the differences be on the side. Just get on with what you agree on. Is that what you would say Saralta would also mean?
Yes, because we are surprisingly, one of the surprising truths of Jainism is that it is better to not create violence than to lie. So, for example, remember we had that famous scenario where a deer walks by and then a hunter comes to your house and says, which way did the deer go? And Jainism says that it is better to lie or not tell anything to the hunter, because you know that if you tell the truth, if you're straightforward, then you will be cause of the violence. So yes, it is better to let things go and just go with what you agree on than to cause friction in bringing up certain topics.
Anybody else have a view, thought? Which, the follow-up on that was the co-workers. Now, if that's the case, what extent do you go till? Because in co-workers' case, there may not be it may not, the relationships are a little more complex. There's your career on the line, there's upward mobility issues, there is your role in the organization, your role in the business, and for a fact, we've all experienced this, for a fact, sometimes your bosses are wrong, most of the time are wrong, and yet you have to make sure you don't go and confront in a very open way, and there's a lot of politics involved. So the thoughtfulness, speech, and action, the three things that you mentioned when you deal with coworkers, are we supposed to say this is like, I'm going to use this term loosely, just be politically correct, just do and say things that is not going to cause friction, and even though you inside, you're not really happy with it, but just do those things because, as you said, you don't want to create violence.
You're certainly right to distinguish between friends and coworkers because you can agree not to talk about certain things with friends. But obviously with coworkers, you're striving towards a common purpose. And that means sometimes when you don't see things the same way, because you're striving towards a common purpose and you need to take action on what you're seeing, there will be disagreements. And so certainly we wouldn't say not to go along to get along just with coworkers, especially when it's a safety issue or when it could lead to more violence or things like that. However, so in that respect, I wouldn't say to treat coworkers the same as friends. However, as you know, there's always a way to bring things up without causing violence. And one of the unfortunate realities is that violence is asymmetric. That is, it doesn't take two people to start a fight. It only takes one person to start a fight between two people. And unfortunately, it takes two people to have peace between them, which is why peace is much harder than war. And so you can only do what you're capable of doing to maintain the peace. And once another side has decided on a disagreement, whether it's because of who you are or what you're saying, or like you said, political reasons like upward mobility and things like that, you can only protect yourself, and you still have to strive to achieve the common purpose at work. But as you know, there are other ways around. There are ways to tell people bad news delicately. There are ways to bring things up in a group. There are ways to talk to another person and ask how you should handle this one person at work, or things like that. Yes, Mihir.
I just wanted to add to that question a little bit, that, especially dealing with work environment and being politically correct, is that going to keep peace in your mind? Because ahimsa also applies for ourselves. And that's the question I raise is, just by not kind of bringing it up, is that going to create a storm in your own mind that you didn't deal with something, and now it's going to have effect on your own self?
Yes, Kaushik.
Yeah, well, so I was going to add more to what you and Mia said. And Paresh gave sort of multiple scenarios, right? Co-workers and boss and everything. And I think you can have different solution based on the scenario, where sometimes, at least that's what I do, and there are ways to approach a certain situation. Like, you're right, many times our bosses are not correct in making the decision, and sometimes we are not, right? So, and when our direct reports look at us, they think of us as the same way. The way I have approached my boss is not to go and tell him how wrong she is, but my approach is always ask her a couple of questions which would lead her to the right answer. And in last 15 months I've been working with this person. She knows me enough that if I ask her questions, she'll pause and think about it, that if he's asking a question, seems like he's not convinced. So if she has to make a decision, so the answer is not always confront, but help that person find that answer. And sometimes you have to be politically right. In fact, this is a good topic to segue into one of the things we are going to talk about, right? Politics at workplace. You just help that person navigate through some of the issues that you see in your eyes, and help them get to an answer. And you have to be politically right. At times, I have to convince my boss that that's her decision, right? Although it's not hers. I'm essentially telling her what needs to be done, but I let her take credit. And you have to pick your battles and let people win at times for bigger good. So we touched upon your personal sort of sanity when you're doing that, right? So if you decide not to confront someone or push back, then how it's going to stay with you, because you also have a moral obligation towards the organization to make sure that you do what's right for the company and in terms of dealing with people or policies for people. So I think it is a much complex issue, and there is no one solution where we can say that not confronting is the answer or accepting is the answer, or it depends upon also the personality you are dealing with. Some are more open to your feedback. I just think it's a little bit complex, varies from situation to situation, people to people, and you decide what makes sense in that situation. So, anyways, Paresh.
Yes, Paresh.
Mir, that was an excellent point. In fact, that is the point I wanted to bring about, and you brought it very nicely. Is the conflict in your mind? It is not the external conflict. And maybe guys, maybe Jainism, is a set of principles. We may be looking at it as as a we need answers. Maybe that's not what is out there. It's within ourselves. What we accept, how we react. Jainism book you can read and say, okay, this is the situation here. This is your solution. And maybe this is the wrong question for me to ask. How to deal with people. I just was wondering if Jainism can help us. Maybe it's not. But thank you, Meher, for bringing that point up, because that is the essential conflict. Whether you are at peace at yourself, not confronting on an issue that you believe that it should have been confronted.
Just a comment. I think we all said there is different answer to different question and situation, but I think that we can use Jainism principles to help arrive to some of those answers. Because still our principles is what should be guiding our response. Yeah, at times we have to be politically correct, and like we all said, it varies from situation to situation, but I think the framework can be used. So to arrive at a solution that makes sense. And obviously we make so many decisions and conversations every day. I can't sit here and tell that I again go back to Jainism principle every single moment and statement, but I think generally, if we are within the guidelines of do what is right, where you are not harming anybody, and trying to work within those principles, I think that's good enough. I feel that. Anyways, that's me.
Any other questions or comments?
Just to get that. I guess the common point of Paresh and mine across a little bit. I'll give you an example. Let's say in your workplace, in your organization, there is a position that you are going for, and you're competing with a woman. There's a company policy. You see it everywhere. They're trying to get 25% of women in the management. That is the goal. That's a diversity goal that company has. And just for it's equal, that's no such thing, but you're exactly equal in terms of qualification. Women as well as women is equally qualified, you're equally qualified. You know that management, whether you get the job or not, the management has, the manager, the hiring manager has an incentive to prove his own side that he is incentivized or she's incentivized to hire a woman in that position just because that's a corporate guideline. There's nothing you can do about that. It's part of the reason, right? You have a choice not to say anything about it, ignore it, or just not even apply it. I mean, that's one thing you could do is and don't say anything about it, because that just, you can talk all day equal opportunity and stuff like that, but there's, you basically think there's not a chance that you stand other than just apply and see what happens. But how do you deal with such situation? What is your opinion on it? Let me know if I've defined the situation properly or not.
Certainly there are times in our life where we can't do anything about it. And in that respect, it's a company policy issue, right? And certainly there are other times where it's a physical issue or a mental issue. There are certain times when we are not in control. But remember, I would counsel anybody in that position to remember that they are in control, because all of their actions up to this point have led them to this point, and they are always reaping the fruits of our karma. The problem in making yourself, in this scenario and in other scenarios, is that it's very easy to become the victim when it appears things are outside your control. And it's especially easy to say, why is this happening to me? For example, let's say everybody gets a stimulus check, but you don't get one because you make too much money. It's very easy to say, oh, these people are getting it and they have it in for me and things like that. It's very easy to become the victim. But I would, in that scenario, I would say, hey, we're blessed. We don't have to have a stimulus check. We're blessed and we're getting the fruits of whatever we earned, and we're earning the fruits of our karma. And I would take that scenario and apply it to this scenario. Say, there's nothing I can do about it. If I start bad-mouthing people, that's papanu bandhu pap. I'm just creating more bad karma to myself. If I start bad-mouthing the company, bad-mouthing the policy, and casting myself as a victim of this diversity policy, right? But there's nothing I can do about it. So I have to make the best of what the cards I'm dealt. And that includes not creating a storm in my own mind and giving myself an opportunity to do more pop and attract more bad karma. That is, there might be a next, I have to think about the good parts. I have to look at how blessed my life is. There might be another opportunity later. This might be the impetus for me to get a better opportunity at another company. This might be the impetus for me to see, hey, let's see if this diversity policy is working. And maybe it is working and maybe it's not working. You see how I have a lot of weapons at my disposal to make sure I do not do more pop by casting myself as the victim. Yes, Paresh.
Sure. No, those are great points, but it's a practical approach to a problem, what you're describing. And then surely, we want to make sure, our principle says, don't get negative thoughts, don't get negative karma, and so let it go. My point, I think the point here is, should you confront? If you know there is something wrong, should you confront or just internalize it and say, no, let's not do negative karma and just move on?
According to me here, there's nothing I can do in this scenario. So to answer your question, I would say no. Confronting will get me nowhere other than causing more violence, because there's nothing I can do.
Well, in that case, we are not going be able to get your point ever across on any issue with him. I mean, this is just devil's advocate. I'm not trying to pick an argument with you. I'm just.
Well, no, I understand, but that's not true. There's always actions and things we can take, but your question was confronting people about it. Now, that's simply causing violence, and if there's nothing I can do and the situation is out of my control, I'm not going to confront anybody about it. But I have control over my actions. If I deeply disagree that I was passed over the promotion because of a diversity requirement that I don't believe in, I mean, obviously I can start polishing my resume and looking for another place to work. And I can do things that are not violent in response to certain stimulus. Yes, Kaushik.
Yeah, I also think that I'm not sure if we can have a black and white answer in these scenarios. Like this diversity one, like in our organization, I know nothing can be done, absolutely nothing. And if I were to go and try and argue that or confront, I may end up losing my job, because that's one thing you can talk about, right? Diversity. And there are certain decisions made in our company recently that even a 4-year-old kid won't make, right? Just to have that right balance and the percentage. So what I have learned, or I'm trying to learn, is or adapt for myself, is those situations which are not in your control, do not, and try and focus your energy somewhere else. Bite your tongue, whatever you need to do. You have to find a way to gain that peace for your mind and ignore that, because what you can, the remaining 75%. And then the question that I ask myself, and so I have a huge team that reports into me, and people come to me with these questions, and at the end of the day, I ask them that then you're working here because you want to work here, right? So if you think that the policies are not aligned with your personal career objectives, nothing can be done. And same thing, I challenge myself that this is a huge company, and not every decision that they're going to make, I'm going to like it or I approve of it. And I mean, they don't have to ask me anything. So I have a choice here. Either I tag along and move forward. And then there are certain scenarios, to my previous point, it can be black and white, right? So these things I let go, but then there are other things where I will aggressively negotiate. If it is about my compensation, the boss knows that this guy is not going to spare me, right? So those things I don't accept, but then there are few things I let go for, because I know that there is no way out. So I think, again, it's not a one answer, but in this example, Neil, the best way is you find peace for yourself, because that's not changing. That's how I look at it.
Yes, Ashish.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think I've not experienced this. I've seen it actually. When my management had to make a decision on some level people, and they said to meet a certain quota, and if we don't do this, we would lose the opportunity to promote somebody. So if you have a quota of 3 promotes out of 10, and they say one of them has to be a female, if you don't promote the female, then you lose that one opportunity as well. But in reality, I think if it were to happen, we just have to go and find other successful stuff that we want to do, right? If you didn't get an opportunity here, kind of just put your head down and say, all right, let me move on and take my, if my skills, my talent somewhere else, if it's not appreciated to the level that the organization wants. Maybe the organization may feel different afterwards, but I don't think it's just about this, right? It goes, I don't know if many people know, but how the criteria of education, right? Some of these bigger schools where a certain percent has to go to a minority base, even if they don't pass their scores or whatnot. UT and A&M had a big thing back when I was going to school where people used to get upset because, they'd be very good marks, and unfortunately they just wouldn't get in because the other schools and other areas were getting the permissions that come to join the school versus people with good criteria. So it's unfortunate, but I think you have to just move forward and find other opportunities. Maybe that, like you said, is going to open bigger and better doors for you.
Any other questions or comments?
Hey, last question from me on this one. There is a category of people it doesn't seem to be covered by this. It's relatives, your siblings. I would assume, Nikantwad and forgiveness would probably be kind of the guiding principles with those relationships. Okay. Let me just say: would that be the way y'all would look at it?
Yes.
Well, thanks again. I mean, this was great, Tim. Everybody, this was great. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for those follow-up questions. And I know during the week, sometimes we think of questions that we should have thought of during the discussion. I want everybody to be open. We can revisit any topic that you've missed or that you've had a question about, and it was from 2 classes ago. Totally fine. We can always bring up any topic. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Kaushik and Mihir, who are going to talk about a very interesting video and the ideas that they had that came out of that video. And first, I'd like to ask you to summarize that video for us because there are no captions in that video.
Kaushik, you're on mute. Go for it.
Well, I was going to ask, you are the expert. Do you want to do it or do you want me to try? Obviously, you have been doing this for some time, but I'll give my 2 cents if you want.
Okay, I'll start, and then you can pitch in, or anybody else who have watched the video can pitch in. So as honestly, I have been in different modes on a lot of customs that we have, and one of the things as kids in US, and we are trained here more so than in India, is we like to question everything. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Why don't we eat this? Why don't we eat that? Why somebody else can eat this and why can't we do that? I mean, there's whys to everything. And one of the things that the Acharya Uday Vallabh Sureshwarji Maharaj Sahib has done, he has won, just to make sure that everybody has the context about him, he has won the Guinness Book record of delivering multiple topics, multiple subjects, and his focus is youth, explaining that to youth. Because this inquisitiveness, somehow when we were youth, was shut down by our parents, especially growing up in India, because partly they didn't know the answer, and they just believed in faith. They're like, okay, just don't worry about science, believe in faith, and that will get you what you need as a mental peace. And I think it's kind of ties to the topic of what we were talking about earlier. One of the hardest things to do is mental peace. You can fake all you want out externally, but when you and your mind is not on the same page, it becomes very difficult, and that's when they call it mental issues and depressions and all that stuff that happens. And after that, it's very difficult to manage it. A physical injury is easy to manage. The mental is difficult. So he has done a lot of work, and even if you have a chance to listen to the video, it's a lot of youth in the audience and asking the questions that's relevant for somebody who doesn't have a clarity on it. So the topic was, why do we do uchamani or bolis? And sometimes people may perceive it as, okay, people are trying to show off their money. And Jainism promotes it. It's set up such a way that one can promote demonstration of their wealth. So the basic thing he starts with, the purpose of religion and everything we do is to improve our quality of our soul. And the Bholi is no exception. It's very similar here as well. that it is ધર્મની વૃદ્ધિ કરવાની છે, means આપણી જે આત્માનો જે ધર્મ છે એની વૃદ્ધિ કરવાની છે, means we have to grow our soul. So that's the purpose. Now there are different ways, and we had a very good discussion last week when we talked about Digambar versus Shwetambar. Yeah, to continue certain things you need means to continue it. In the Magad, just to survive, for the religion to survive, they had to do something. And we all will agree, even in US being more practical, that you can't do things without money. Whether it's managing temple, whether it's doing certain things, you just can't manage it. And especially, I think it's more competitive in US. As we know, all of our child, we want our child be the first one to be on the stage. That's just the mentality of US, and we all want it. Well, that same thing applied. So the one he says is, why Bholi? He said, okay, one way is to say is we need finances to run our organizations, right? So we need to find a way to get the finances, and this is one way to get it, finances. Okay, well, if this way doesn't work, we all have alternatives. So he talks about alternatives. Okay, you're saying that this Bholi should not be the way to do it, not the financially. Let somebody do Ekashnas. Okay, so that's an alternative. Let's see, test it, if it's feasible to have that alternative. So Paresh says, okay, I'm going to do 100 Ekashna. Kaushik says, I can do 105. Timir says, I'm going to do 110. And that's the way the Bholi occurs. Well, Ashish says, well, I can't do Ekashnas because I don't like Kalilupani. Well, I can do upvases. Can you convert that into number of upvases I need to do? And Umesh says, well, I prefer doing Ambil. It's all tap. So let's make it in terms of tap. And then somebody says, well, I can do no karwaris. Or I can do kamashnas. Or I can do. So what happens in this case is, let's say we do agree on somebody amongst the six and do something. Well, how do you verify it? How is Paresh going to get a receipt saying that he won this Bholi because he did 100 upwas? What is a means to validate and verify that? Well, it's a very difficult to do that. Let's come up with another means. Somebody says, okay, I'm diabetic. I can't do tap at all. It's not my physical strength. But I want to do 75,000 kamashnas in 1 year. And I want this Bholi. So all these become sort of a difficult thing. Because imagine in India or in US, I know one of my dad, for example, he loves to do pakshal. One of the reasons he loves to do pakshal because pakshal happens the first and he wants to leave the derasa quickly so he can get to his work. Well, who does the first pakshal? It just apparently somehow we have attached the sentiment in such a way that there is a value in doing the first pakshal. And you do the first one. Well, if it's led up to a person or a manager over there and say, okay, he will let my dad do it. Well, somebody else will question and say, why not my dad? Or why not me? So it becomes a subjective. And what he says is, you have to have a means to do it. And the Bholi is just a means to do it. It's one way of doing it because it's a convenient way. It's a verifying way. It's a way easy to manage the system. It helps to keep up with the organization. And the other thing is, it doesn't take away the main purpose. The purpose should be the same. If somebody's coming there to show his $1 million or crores dollars, and if he doesn't improve the soul as a main purpose, it's not an intent. But you can make everybody do it. It's just a door, an avenue to do it. What he also says is you can't blame somebody to spend money on their asset. For example, if somebody decides to spend 1 crore in a wedding just to show or even just that's what they want to do. Well, if somebody wants to show 1 crore in their asset, it's just we could agree that that's something we can't question because they just want to do it for this cause. at least from a, if you think that helps them to get a one step closer, that shouldn't be questioned. So I think these are the main highlights. The main purpose is it's dharmani vritti. It's a means, it's a manageable means, verifiable means to function. It's not just to demonstrate the wealth. It is to earn and dedicate the wealth in the right cause. Again, here assuming that everybody agrees that Derasar is investing, it's a right cause and helps your karma. Also, it's a reminder that if you are donating it, you need to continue earning the right way, because you are around and socializing with the people who are giving you these values and mindset. So those are the things I recall and remember from the thing. And obviously we can talk about so why. One other thing he mentioned, and I think that's where the management aspect comes into play, is what is the cost? If you look at the cost of doing a pakshal, what does it involve? It involves a kalash, a value. Let's say if you buy a new kalash, the cost of kalash is certain amount, and then water, which you can agree it's a negligible cost, and somebody is willing to pay 1 crore rupees to do a pakshal, to do the first one, because that's the value for that person. So you have a cost, you have a price that somebody is willing to sell it at, and then you have the value for somebody to do this karma. And that's a management concept that I think was sort of an appealing for me as well. So anyways, that's the summary that I captured during the video I watched a couple of times.
Do you think that we could run the Jain Center on anonymous donations?
I don't think so.
So we got one no. Anybody think yes? Because, okay, so you said, okay, why Bholi's? We have to finance the Jain Center somehow. I certainly understand that. And there's something good about hacking our own brain for the benefit of the Jain Center. That's great. We all know that we have a human brain that likes to, puff itself up a little bit. And then we set up this straw man about this doing this stuff, and how is that any different, and who's going to do what stuff, but what about running the Jain Center on anonymous donations? Oh, you're on mute there, Paresh. Let me unmute.
Sorry about that. Well, I would think about it, at least the way I think about it is this. Implicit in that argument that donations should be anonymous is the fact that you want to, or not you in particular.
You can say you say me. That's what I want. I want the Jain Center to run on anonymous donations, and I want to axe the whole Bholi process.
Right. So I think implicit in that argument is the idea that we should not consider monetary aspect of this issue at all, because that's essentially. I know you are agreeing that we need funds, we need money to run the center. I understand that, but if somebody is giving that money, why would you not celebrate it? Why would you consider it a bad thing? We should not be. One of the things that I think I took away from the video is transparency. He's saying it is transparent. When you have one medium, it is very transparent. It is very verifiable. It is very transparent. And the criticism that Bolbala is what you're referring to, Tim, the criticism that people with money only will be able to get the recognition. And his rebuttal to that, or his explanation, I wouldn't say rebuttal, his explanation is, what is the harm in celebrating somebody who actually sacrificed, who is actually giving the money, as opposed to people who are not giving money? I found that very powerful, actually. In fact, it is liberating. You, as a Sangh, we always say Sanghpati, people who donate must be celebrated because they are contributing in a way that is beneficial to the Sangh. Now, we all have our biases. We all have reasons why we do things, right? I mean, if you are doing it with a clean heart, say, I'm donating this for the benefit of the Sangh, for Derasar, I don't see any reason why we should not celebrate that person's contribution.
Yes, Kaushik.
Yeah, in addition to what Paresh said, I think so celebrating and also inspiring others, motivating others to do the same. I think that's what comes out of it. So when Paresh does something good, I want to celebrate his deeds, and then that way others who are rich and who are capable of doing something, they feel like they should be doing something as well. So in the video, they start with this cost price value concept, and then within value, why value is different. They talk about that initially, and then they said it is clear in order to celebrate that you're going to use money, like Mir said, in terms of managing the process. And then the other options can be other dharam things, or it can be non-dharam things, right? So the example was given, it can be based on who does more face time. It has to be something dharam, but dharam is not transactional or transparent. We all agreed that we want to be transparent. So part of being transparent is not being anonymous, right? So we are going there. And then there was also a detailed argument, a few seconds in the video is, within the rich, you are not appreciating everyone. So within rich, wealthy person, there are two types. One was collecting and one was donating. And what we are doing here, to your point, Chimir, the person who is donating, we need to talk about that person. Of course, now it's a different thing. If a person doesn't want to give out his or her name, that's completely different. But I don't see any reason for us mandating that, because that also conflicts with our process of managing the outcome. So if it is anonymous, then who does the job, right? Because at the end of the day, we also want to manage using this process. So it's a twofold. One is celebrate and manage the process.
Yes, Ashish. Oh, you're on mute, Ashish.
Sorry. What I was saying is that during the Bholi here in Houston, like after you win it or whatever, you got to take it to home, right? Take turns to take it home. If you don't participate in Bholi, will you still get a chance to take it home? Are they going to say no?
I don't understand the question. So as I understand it, you give money, and then one of the benefits of giving money is you get a chance to take this murti home. When you say you don't participate, do you mean you don't give money, or you give money and you say, no, I don't want to take it home?
Well, no, you did not participate in the Bholi. You didn't win it. You didn't donate. So are you not allowed to take that after those other people have taken it?
Correct. That's right.
Do you not get a chance to do that now?
I think so. I think you're right. You do not get a chance.
So you are basically promoting that if you don't give a prize, you can't take it. And what is it doing outside the other days? It's stored in a storage lock somewhere, in a locked compartment. It says if you don't pay a price, you don't get to use it or bring it to your home. And your intentions are only good as you as a member of the society. But you're now putting a price to be part of that exclusive have and have-nots. If you have it, you can do this. If you don't have it, I don't have the money. I can't do it.
Yes, Umesh.
donation in appreciation is actually required, and this process is running from the very long time. And by doing the Anumodana, they get some positive vibration also. So I think donations should not be anonymous. But yeah, the person who want to do anonymous, he can do. Is welcome. But I think some appreciation required for doing the donation, and we should celebrate it.
Okay, before I get to Kaushik, I have 3 rebuttals for you guys. What is the harm of celebrating? Well, the last time I checked, ego was one of our enemies, and we're Jains. And the word Jain comes from the word Jina, which means conquering our enemies. And we don't want to promote our enemies. That's treason. We're fighting anger, ego, deceit, and greed. My second point is, what's the harm in inspiring others? We're inspiring others to be greedy. That's what we're doing. We're inspiring others to be greedy so they can also participate in the Bholis. And my third rebuttal is this transparency argument is a sham argument. There's no hint of corruption in the Derasur. To justify this Bholi process by saying, it's transparency, that's simply a sham argument. There's no hint that, people making an anonymous donation, there's no evidence that will corrupt the Derasur. Yes, Kaushik.
Well, I was going to respond to what Ashish was saying.
Sure, yes.
I think if the example of Murthy, if everybody's given that chance, then you're not being fair to the people who has given the Bholi, right? This is like, you pay for the movie or do you watch it online, right? Without paying for it. I think you have to do something in order to, because that's what we said, cost, price, and value. On that basis, you have to put that value in. Now, obviously, if the Derasur decides that after the initial occasion has been addressed, and then it is open for public, like it's done in the pujas as well, right? The first person has to pay, first one family, and then others are allowed to do. I think that's fair, but the argument can be that without paying, I don't get the first chance, because it goes back to the process. Pradesh, you had your hand up, but I can talk about your comments as well, but later on. Let me talk about let's see what Pradesh is. Pradesh.
Thanks, Kaushik. I was actually going to say I'm going to only, Tim brought 3 points up, so I'll take one. Y'all can, divvy up the other 2, and
just caution, Paresh. Next lecture you may be presenting. Okay.
That's better. Tim, on the ego issue, are we promoting egoism? Is that the objective of this?
Certainly.
I would question that. I don't see it as promoting egoism. I see it as celebrating donation. Somebody who is willing to part with what they have. Not everybody is willing to part. And by the way, I don't want to create a class system here. Somebody donating $500 is equal to somebody donating 500 million. So I get that part. Okay. All I'm saying is we are not the objective. Now, people may take it in a different way, and I mentioned that. The objective is not to promote egoism. The objective is to celebrate donation and giving, the giving part. But that's just on the ego issue.
Yes, Mihir.
Here's one thing. It's a practical. Are you able to hear me? Yeah. Okay. So it's a practical approach. Okay. It's the first day. Let's say it's one of the heaviest day, Mahavir Jayanti, whichever day you want to pick. Pick a day. There are 10 people, of which five of them are anonymous donors, Nobody knows. And 5 of them are not donating. They don't know about donation concept. They don't have it. They are there. They all believe in Murti Puja. They want to do Bhagwani Puja. And somehow it's instilled in them that, puja, they want to be first. For whatever reason, they want to be the first to do the puja. One of the volunteers from us is there. Kaushik is in charge. And he needs to decide who will do the first puja. Who will be the first one. And it might not be that it's a value that you get more punya if you do the first puja. It's just like somebody needs to go. Somebody has something else going on. But they all want to be the first one. How do we decide who does the first puja? And Murti Puja, what we have to here take into consideration is Murti Puja is part of our religion, and everybody's encouraged to do puja. So who does the first one? How do we decide that?
Yes, Ashish.
I stepped away for real quick. What I wanted to mention also, it's almost similar to people who pay donations. You can now put your kid in school because you've given them the money. Whereas a family that doesn't have the money doesn't get the right to access to the education system. So it's just another level, right? You give the donations. You're showing that I still believe that it feeds the ego, regardless of the person. I'm not saying that people are doing that for the ego. We all know they're doing it for the pure benefit of the Samaj, for the pure benefit of your religion and whatnot. But inherently, it promotes, I believe, ego, which is against the law principles. Like I said, like you were saying, I think if you were purely on an anonymous basis, would these people do the same thing? If you purely made donations and just made everyone stand in line and say, hey, if you want to take the Murti home and do darshan, sign up. We'll raffle it out. Will they do it still? Test it out and see what happens. How much donations do you get? If they really have the pure will of donating, if they have the pure will of getting in line like everybody else and be receptive of the Murti whenever they want to take it home, would it really work? Maybe not, and then they'll right back to the same way.
Yes, Kaushik.
Yeah, so Paresh asked the question, is it truly feeding ego? Mir asked question from process perspective, who will go first? Your third question that you had around transparency. So if money is not the thing, then what do you suggest? That's the question. What is the alternate way to get this process in place? And then one more thing I would ask is, you're questioning why we should be celebrating and feeding the ego of the wealthy person who's donating, right? So, and the question is, if there are two wealthy people in Jain Samaj, one buys a $1 million car and one spends $1 million in Derasar, who do you celebrate, right? Because now you're saying just don't celebrate anybody, because we can't motivate anybody, we can't say any good things to anyone, because regardless, right? If you tell someone what an excellent car you bought, then you're feeding. So who do you choose between the two? Is a question that a person who's collecting or is donating. And this, I'm stealing this concept from that video, by the way, because that was something that was asked as well. That then what do you do? So essentially, if we can't motivate or talk good about a person who's donating, then what else would you comment on in terms of promoting or motivating certain things?
Well, certainly the answer to the lesser of two evils argument, which you are presenting, is always no evil. I'm choosing no evil. You create a premise where, okay, let's choose the lesser of two evils, but I don't want to do any evil.
Again, that goes back to Paresh's question. Is that an evil? If a person, if Jain Shiva is giving his land away, where he could have built a $1 million mansion, and he's saying, I'm going to give this away hard-earned money that I could have used somewhere else for my personal comfort. And again, I just pick an example, not to pick on that person. But so do I, when I I meet him, not tell him that what a great job he's doing, because it's going to make him egoistic. And even if I think if he feels egoistic, that's good, because he's going to donate more, and that's what I want for Jain Dharam. So again, there are different ways to look at it, but everybody is valid.
Yes, Mihir.
One thing I just want to say, I think what we have to think about, like Ashish had a good idea earlier about raffle and things. What we have to apply, this solution has to be applicable to thousands and millions of people or millions of Jain throughout the world, and not just for JSH or a small community, which is sort of a manageable. And what we have to deal with, we are dealing with the entire, rich versus poor, the men's, women's, educated, uneducated. So the solution has to be applicable all around the board, and it might be easier to apply. For example, if we customize something for JSH, maybe, but that's just my point. That when we think about solution, we have to think about a solution that's applicable for the entire Jain community.
Yes, Paresh.
One of the other things you raised, Tim, is transparency, and I would also argue that it is infinitely more transparent when you use a medium that is verifiable, as opposed to something that is not verifiable, and you go by the honor system. I'm curious why you call it a sham, Jim.
Well, it is a justification for a solution to a problem that is not there. Just because somebody makes an anonymous donation doesn't mean that the JSH doesn't know who it was, what the amount was. It's verified by bank transfer or check writing or anything like that. It's there. Everything's verified. But you bring up this transparency argument like that's all not there. It's a solution to a problem we don't have, which is corruption through anonymous donation.
I think, Timmy, you may have misunderstood. If a person decides to do an anonymous donation, I don't think there we have a transparency issue. The transparency issue was if we use a medium that's not money, and if it is Naukarwalis, then who's going to sit and count if Paresh did 100,000 Naukars or 99,000 Naukars? I think that is where the transparency issue was. And then near to Ashish's point, and you were mentioning about doing raffles. There again, with the raffles, you still need to run the temple. So at the end of the day, you need that income so that you can employ and maintain the murti and the temple. So again, that is another reason.
I think you guys have forgotten about Jainism. Who is counting? Karma is counting. If you take a vow and you break your vow, what is the result? You get bad karma. Who cares who's counting? Who cares if you didn't say it? If you say you're going to do it, you didn't do it, you're going to get your bad karma. And I trust that to happen.
But that's not the world we live in. When your paycheck comes in, I'm sure you verify you got everything that you had signed up for. We don't sit back and say, if the person didn't pay me, it's his karma and all that, right? So we live.
If the person donates money and says, I'm going to do 100 Naukavaris, and I don't care if he does it or not. I care if the money's donated and it's his bad karma. I trust that his karma will go to him, just like I trust my actions will result in my karma. We can't forget about Jainism when we talk about these things. Very fruitful discussion today. Thank you guys for bringing that up. Always, if I offended anybody, I'm deeply sorry. And obviously, there are lots of ways. This is a controversial subject. Again, we're talking about a controversial subject. And again, I want to make sure that everybody understands I have respect for everybody. I do understand that the Jain Center needs money to run. And I do understand it's hard to have that money. And I do understand that people make sacrifices when they give that money. But very fruitful discussion today. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Any last questions or comments?
I would just say, again, thanks to Mihir and Kaushik. It's a really important topic. I struggled with it for a long time until actually I always looked at it from the element of capitalism, and I was like, okay, that's the only way out of this thing, But there, the arguments that the Maharaj Sahib presented and the explanations that he gave, other were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He deconstructed the criticism one by one, and I want to thank both of you guys, really.
Yes, Kaushik.
I was just going to say this is Mir's idea, so credit goes to him. I didn't even watch this video before, and Timur, we know that you always ask us difficult questions for us to think deeply. So anything that you say, we never take it negative, just so that you know. All we do is appreciate you help us think through, and different thoughts and questions and challenges are always good. So thanks for doing that.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.